Okay, people, I'm going to be honest. Quadratic Formula 2, this is the 5th time I've recorded this video. It keeps messing up. So, I'm not going to be really reactive about these armadillos because I've seen them 5 times now, but they are kind of, I'd like to say cute, but they're a little creepy. Anyway, 15 seconds. Go! Give me the quadratic formula. Did you do it correctly? X equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Woo! Hope so. All right, let's do it to it, guys. Here we go. We got to move this 9 to the other side. We're going to do that by subtracting 9. So we have x squared plus 8x minus 9 equals 0. Let's identify A. A is 1, leading coefficient. B is 8, the coefficient of the guy with x. So the opposite of B is negative 8. C is negative 9. We're also going to do the discriminant, b squared minus 4ac. So 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 9. 64 minus 4 times negative 9, out of room. 64 plus 36 is 100. So we're going to say x equals negative b, which is negative 8, plus or minus the square root of the discriminant, which is 100, all over 2 times a, which is 1. So the question this guy's asking here, first of all, my question to you is, did you know their bellies were hairy? Did not know that. Did not know that. Look at him. He's going, ooh, ooh, ooh. Is there, his question, is there a square root of 100? The answer is yes. So when we do this, we're going to do negative 8. We're going to take 2 times 1, and the square root of 100 is 10. So because it's a perfect square and there's no radical left, remember now we have to go to negative 8 plus 10 over 2, which is 2 over 2. So we find out x is equal to 1. And we go to negative 8 minus 10 over 2, negative 18 over 2, and we find out x is negative 9. If we were graphing this, you just found that it crosses the x-axis at 1 and at negative 9. Now, you don't know if it opens up or down. You might say, but a is positive. That's only because we took everything to the left side. If we had taken everything to the other side, x would have been a negative, x squared. You can only decide that when you have the y equals, okay? So when it's given to you as an equation without a y, we don't know which way it opens, but we do know where the x-intercepts are. All right, this one's ready to go. So a is 1, b is 7, which makes the opposite of b negative 7, and c is 5. So when we go to b squared minus 4ac, we have 7 squared minus 4 times 1 times 5. 49 minus 4 times 5. 49 minus 20 is 29. So let's set up the quadratic formula. X is equal to negative b, which is negative 7, plus or minus the square root of 29, all over 2 times a, which is 1. So we're going to set up the negative 7. We're going to multiply 2 times 1. Mr. Armadillo here, I'm going to be honest, I think they look mean. He looks kind of mean. His question is there a square root of 29? The answer is no. 29 is prime. So this is your answer. If you were trying to graph these, you would have to actually do negative 7 plus the square root of 29, find out what that is, divide by 2, and you would get a decimal approximation. You would have to do negative 7 minus the square root of 29, find out what that is, divide by 2, and you would get a decimal approximation. We're not doing it, so I'm going to ignore that. Next slide. Ooh, look at this guy. He's going, oh my goodness, goodness, goodness. We got to move the 2m squared by subtracting 2m squared. It goes under the 10m squared. We got to subtract the 2m. It goes under the already negative 2m. These cancel. So we have 8m squared minus 4m minus 3 equals 0. So a is 8. B is negative 4, which means the opposite of B is 4, and C is negative 3. Let's find the discriminant. So we have negative 4 squared. Remember, we're going to use parentheses when we substitute these numbers in, because when we square negative 4, we have to square the negative also, so it comes out to a positive 16. Minus 32 times negative 3. So that is 16 plus 96, which comes out to 112. Now it looks like I'm really good at math, but remember, this is the 5th time I've recorded this video. I have done this problem before. All right, I'm a little bored with the white, although I really do like it. So m is equal to the opposite of b, which is 4, plus or minus the square root of the discriminant, which is 112, all over 2 times 8. So we have 4. 2 times 8 is 16. What this guy wants to know is there a square root of 112? It is not a perfect square, so we're going to hedge it. So it is even. We divide by 2, we get 56. We divide by 2 again, we get 28. We divide by 2 again, we get 14. Divide by 2 again, we get 7. Switch to 7, and we get 1. We have a pair of 2's. We have another pair of 2's. 2 times 2 is 4. And we have the square root of 7 left. Now you might think I would hit the arrow to go on to the next page, but I'm not going to, because at this point, which is right here, you have to look at all outside numbers. Now what I mean by an outside number is this square root of 7 right here, square root of 7, that's an inside number. It's inside the radical. So the outside numbers, I wish I had a highlighter, are 4, 4, and 16. And you need to ask, this is the question you're going to ask, do they, pronoun referring to outside numbers, all divide by the same number? Okay? In other words, do they have a common factor? The answer in this case is yes, they all divide by 4. So I'm taking every outside number and I'm dividing it by 4. So my final answer, 4 divided by 4 is 1, plus or minus 4 divided by 4 is 1. The square root of 7 is inside, I don't deal with it. 16 divided by 4 is 4. Again, there's a radical left, so I'm leaving it. I'm leaving it all up to you. Okay, I do think you need to Google, YouTube, the Friends episode that talks about the Hanukkah armadillo. It's a pretty good one. That's what I keep thinking of this entire video. Got to move the 4x. I'm going to subtract 4x from 25x. Got to move the negative 3. I'm going to add 3 to 15. So I have 5x squared plus 21x plus 18 equals 0. So I'm going to identify A, B, and C. A is 5. B is 21, making the opposite of B, negative 21. That looks like 2.1. I don't know. There's just a little goober there. C is 18. My discriminant, B squared minus 4AC, is 21 squared. Use parentheses. Minus 4. A is 5. C is 18. 21 squared is 441 minus 20 times 18. 20 times 18 is 360. So I have 441 minus 360, and that gives me 81. So let's go. Does gray work? I don't know. X equals, oh, it doesn't work very well. Let's switch to black. X equals negative B, which is negative 21, plus or minus the square root of the discriminant, which is 81, all over 2 times A, which is 5. Now remember, I go ahead and set this up, and then I go over to Mr. Armadillo and I say, hey, furry belly, is there a square root of 81? He says, yuppers, the square root of 81 is 9. Because I have no radical left, I have to do negative 21 plus 9 over 10. That would be negative 12 over 10. So x would equal negative 6 over 5. I also have to do x is negative 21 minus 9 over 10. That would be negative 30 over 10. So x would be negative 3. Now, if you were graphing that, there's 1, 2, 3. Negative 6/5 is negative 1 1/5. So you would go negative 1 and a little bit more. Okay? We are so close to being done. Here is slide 10. Slide 10, I'm going to move that 16 over by subtracting it. It can't combine with the x squared, so I have x squared minus 16 equals 0. A is 1. What is b, guys? Remember, if I look back here, b is the coefficient of the guy with x. Do I have just an x? I do not, so b is 0. Making the opposite of b also 0. C is negative 16. So when I go to my discriminant, b squared minus 4ac, it's 0 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 16, 0 minus 4 times negative 16, 0 plus 64, so it equals 64. Okay? Look at that. See the parabolic curve? Oh my gosh, nature is just full of parabolas. Okay, found something. Bunnies and armadillos are the same animal. One with a hard shell, one's furry. Oh my gosh. So x is going to equal negative b, which is 0, plus or minus the square root of the discriminant, which is 64, all over 2 times a, which is 1. 0 plus or minus. Okay, Mr. Bunny Imitator, is there a square root of 64? The answer is yes. It is 8, all over 2. So x is going to equal 0 plus 8, all over 2. 8 over 2, x is going to equal 4. X is going to equal 0 minus 8 over 2, negative 8 over 2, x is going to be negative 4. What am I finding there? Remember, I am finding the solutions, x equals. I am finding the roots, x equals. I am finding the zeros, x equals. And when I find the x-intercepts, they would be points 4, 0, and negative 4, 0. The other three are x equals. What value of x does the graph cross the x-axis? Okay, number 6 is already set up equal to 0. A is 1. B is 0 because there is no coefficient of just d, making negative b also 0. C is negative 12. So when I go to b squared minus 4ac, 0 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 12, 0 minus 4 times negative 12, 0 plus 48, so my discriminant is worth 48. So D is equal to the opposite of B, which is 0, plus or minus the square root of the discriminant, which is 48, all over 2 times A, which is 1. So, Mr. Armadillo, is there a square root of 48? Well, there's not a perfect square root, but it can hedge. Divide by 2, I get 24. Divided by 2, I get 12. Divide by 2, I get 6. Divide by 2, I get 3. Divide by 3, I get 1. Pair of 2's brings out a 2. Pair of 2's brings out a 2. So it's going to be 4 times the square root of 3. If you're having trouble hedging, talk to your teacher. Go back and watch the hedging video. It'll be fun, fun, fun. Okay, so now we have 0 equals, that's not 0, guys, that's a D. So D equals 0 plus or minus 4 times the square root of 3 over 2. We can get rid of the 0. We're just going to say plus or minus 4 times the square root of 3 over 2. Wait. Remember that question? What about the outside numbers? Do 4 and 2 all divide by the same thing? They all divide by 2. So D is going to equal plus or minus 2 times the square root of 3 over 1. We're just going to say plus or minus 2 times the square root of 3. Okay, I'm going to go with checkpoint. Checkpoint 1, solve each equation with the quadratic formula. Remember the quadratic formula, Mr. Armadillo, is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of the discriminant, b squared minus 4ac, all over 2a. So, good luck, have fun. End of this video, let's pray it works.